when you go out to war against your enemy. So we're clearly talking, Rashi says, Milchemes HaRishus. We're talking about the wars that were fought outside of Israel. Because the wars fought in Israel, you didn't have captives. It was lo sachai kol neshama. They had choices. Either they could leave the country, or they were killed. They didn't take prisoners in the war to conquer Israel. That was not part of the wars. Hard to see, right? Yes. But Milchemes Rishus, which means wars done outside of Israel, Moab, Ammon, Syria, these type of countries, you could take certain captives. And those captives were the ones that is talking about over here of a Yafas Toar. So it talks about that, you bring back a woman and it goes through the whole process, but we're going to go a little bit further. We get into the Parasha of Soreh Umorah. So now, Ki yeli ish ben Soreh Umorah. A person has a child, a boy, let's say, between the ages of 13 and 13 and a half, is a specific age group. Soreh Umorah. He's rebellious. He's old enough to know better, which means they matured a lot faster in those days because life matured them. And he is rebellious. And then he doesn't listen, b'kol aviv v'b'kol imo, to the voice of his father and mother.
Rebellious means loyal. Soldier loyal, rebellious?
He's rebellious, means to rebel, he doesn't listen. He goes out, he drinks, he eats. He lives a lifestyle that's expensive, and when the money dries out, what's he going to do? He's going to steal, he's going to rob. And people are going to defend themselves, they're not going to want to be having their money stolen, and he's going to come to kill someone. That's how the progression, that's how they think it is. Now it's interesting, in the first introduction, in Pasuk Yud Ches, when it says a man has a son, Soreh Umoreh, the word moreh, which means to rebel, is spelled mem vav resh he, complete. It's like all the letters are there. In 2 psukim later, where it says v'omru al ziknei iro, he says to the elders of the community, our child is a soreh umoreh. The word umoreh is spelled without the vav, mem resh he. There's no vav. See, here there's mem vav resh he, and here the vav is left out. Right? So the Meforshim explained something interesting. They say there are 6 conditions that if those conditions are missing, the child is not a soreh umoreh. For example, if one of the parents is lame, can't walk well, so you can't chase after the child, maybe to educate the child. You can't hold the child responsible. The parent is a cherish, is deaf, can't hear the child. Suma, the parent is blind. Or elaim, right? The parent can't talk, so he can't tell the child what to do. Or gidem, the parent is missing a hand, maybe can't teach the child how to behave. Or a city that has no zakanim, no rabbonim, no rabbis, no teachers. If you're missing one of these 6 things, the child is not responsible. So the second pasuk, where it talks about holding him responsible and executing him, the vav is left out. Telling you if 6 things are missing, you can't do that. The first pasuk says that when you bring him the first time, v'yisru, so they punish him. They might give him malchos, they might chastise him, they don't execute him. There it's written full. Because even if the parents are not completely able to educate, the community has to educate. Now it becomes very interesting that when it comes to education of children, the parents have the first responsibility. But if the parents are not doing their job, the responsibility falls to the community. The community has a responsibility to educate the child. And what it's trying to tell you is that, if things are missing, we have an excuse. It's like what I told you last week with Rav Pam. Rav Pam says a good yeshiva boy should find an excuse to justify Bnei Yisrael's behavior. because that's what yeshiva boys do. They're always answering the Rashi and the Tosfos. The Gemara says that a case of Ben Sora Amora never happened. Rabbi Yochanan says he remembers such a case and he sat on the person's grave, but the opinion of the Gemara is it never happened. Rather, Drosh, we talk about it, right? We scare children about it. So, umakabel schar, and then you get the reward of your children behaving. So hopefully we tell children that if they misbehave and they don't follow the rules of the Torah, and they're doing things that are not proper, then, of course, there's going to be a responsibility. It's interesting, we talked about this a little bit, I want to go into it a little bit. There's a contradiction. Let me tell you what the contradiction is. By the Ben Sora Umore, he's 13 years old. Did he commit a capital crime yet? No. It's a suspicion, right? It's a suspicion. So we judge him for what we think is going to be his future. The Mizrahi, it's a Pirush on Rashi, the Mizrahi, he says, I don't understand. By Yishmael, we know what his future was. He was going to murder a lot of Jews. Yishmael. And when Hagar threw him under the bush, right, it says, Vayishma Elokim es kol hanar ba'asher husham. Hashem heard the voice of the boy, of the nar, of the child, ba'asher husham, as he was crying under the tree. And then it says, Kishoma Elokim el kol hanar. Hashem heard the voice. So the angel said to Hashem, don't save him. He's dying. He's hungry, he's thirsty, he's in the desert, he's dying. Let him die. That's what the angel said to Hashem. Hashem said, why? He says, look at the future. The future is he'll be a murderer. He's going to kill your children. He's going to kill Jews. So Hashem said to the angels, but what is he now? Right now, is he a murderer or is he innocent? What's the answer? He's innocent. I judge a person by what he is today. The Gemara is in Rosh Hashanah, Omar Rav Yitzchak, Ein doni neso odom el lefi ma'aso, shall also show. We judge a person on how he acts at that moment. Shenemar ki shoma Elokim el kol hanar, Hashem heard the voice of the boy, ba'asher hu shom, where he was. So the Mizrahi says, I don't get it. He says, we look at the Ben Soro Moreh, we're judging him about his future. He did nothing. But we think he will. Gone. Yishmael, who they all knew in the future would do terrible things, Hashem saved him. So what is it? So Rabbi Ephraim brings it down, and I heard that Rabbi Olbam also spoke about this, brings down an interesting Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. Listen to this Gemara. It's a very fascinating Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. Daf Yud Ches. Tanya. Hoya Rabbi Meir Omer. Rabbi Meir used to say, now Rabbi Meir was one of the great Tanoim. Shnayim she'olu lemito. There are two people, both in bed, both in the hospital. V'chuleim shove. And their illnesses are exactly the same. They both have a heart disease. V'chein shnayim she'olu legardu. Two people are arrested and standing before court. Lidun, in a case, v'dinan shove, and their crime is exactly the same. Duplicate. Yet, ze yorad v'ze lo yorad. One patient got better and leaves the hospital, the other patient dies in the hospital. Ze nitzal v'ze lo nitzal. One person is found not guilty by the court, and the other is found guilty. So the Gemara says, "Mibnei ma ze yorad v'ze lo yorad." Why did one survive and one did not? Ze nitzal v'ze lo nitzal. Why was one saved from the hangman's noose and the other one was not? Ze hispalel v'nena. One of them davened and was answered. V'ze hispalel, and one of them davened v'lo nena, but wasn't answered. So the Gemara says, but if they both davened, they're back to being the same again. So the Gemara says, no. Zeh his palel tefillah shalema. One davened with all his heart. That's why he was answered. And one didn't daven with all his heart. And therefore he wasn't answered. So the answer that they give is a fascinating answer. The Ben Sorah Umorah, he's rebellious. He doesn't believe in God or Torah or anything. What's he doing? Is he davening for anything? Nothing. That's why he's hung. That's why he's put to death. By Yishmael, what was Yishmael doing that got Hashem's attention? He was davening. He was crying to Hashem, please don't let me die. Please save me. Vayishma Elokim is called Hanar. Hashem said to the angels, when a person davens, don't tell me about tomorrow. What's he today? It's a fascinating answer. People daven, and they don't daven hard enough. They give up hope. Right? They don't believe, or they feel it's not going to make a difference. And sometimes a person davens, and it works, and sometimes those tefillos are stored away for some future generation. I have no idea the cheshbonos of Shamayim. But the Gemara is telling you that the difference between two similar verdicts or two similar illnesses is the power of tefillah. And the difference between Yishmael and Ben Sorah Umorah, Yishmael was a proven killer, and he escaped. Because at that moment, he did something that the Ben Sorah Umorah did not. He raised up his voice, and he cried out to Hashem. And he said to Hashem, help me, I don't want to die. That's something that Rabbi Fran brings down. It's a very fascinating answer that Rabbi Fran brings down. It's interesting, we know on Elul, we talk about all these different hints to Elul. Elul's, Ani ledodi, ledodi li. I am to Hashem, who I love, and Hashem loves me. It's a mirror back and forth relationship. Spells Elul, the first letters. The Bava Rebbe said something very interesting. Elul, echod lechatas, ve'echod le'olah. One korban is brought for a sin offering, and one korban is brought for an olah, as a burnt offering. And the first letters, echod lechatas, aleph lamed, ve'echod le'olah, spells Elul. So everybody says, the Bava Rebbe, this is so cryptic. What is he talking about? One for chatas, one for olah, Elul, what is the message? So he gives a very fascinating answer. He says as follows. He says, every year in Elul, in Rosh Hashanah, what do? We do a cheshbon hanefesh. We look back at the past year. So echod, some people, lachatos, they review all their sins. And they say to themselves, I made mistakes. I'm sorry. I'm going to do better next year. Right? Hashem, forgive me. It's interesting. Everybody asks Hashem that next year should be better than this year. Hashem says, no problem. But I have a request from you. What's that? I want you to be better next year than you were this year. You want me to give you a better year. I want you to be a better person. It's a two-way street. But the Bava Rebbe says as follows: Echod lechatos. There are some people, they look at the year, they look at their mistakes, and they say, okay, I made mistakes. Ve'echod, and there are people who at the same time, le'olah. Olah means to go up. They look at the good things they did. So they say to Hashem, right, I made mistakes. I admit that. But I did a lot of good things also. I learned, I spent time in yeshiva, I spent time going to shiurim, I went to minyan, I kept Shabbos, I was careful on kosher, I gave tzedakah. So the Bava Rebbe says that's Elul, where a person says, I made mistakes, I'm sorry, but I did good things. Next year, given the chance, I'll do more good things. He says that's Elul. Elul is a balance, We don't go for extremes. I often caution people from extremes. The Rambam always talked about the Shavil Hazav, the middle road. He never liked extremes. But the Bava Rebbe says, that's Elul. Echod. Right? Lechatas, the Echod le'olah. It's a wonderful, wonderful pshat. We talked about last week a little bit, the importance of kavod HaTorah, respect for Rabbanim. So I saw a story, I don't know if I shared this with you, with Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein. A lot of people are asking questions now, so there are a lot of stories coming out from the books that he's written. He's written a lot of books, Rabbi Zilberstein. He says there was a young lady that was engaged to a very fine yeshiva boy. And the wedding was a few weeks off, they were going to get married. And this young lady, her brother, had an epileptic seizure. Epilepsy is an illness. And he fell to the ground, and he was twitching, and he had a seizure. And they had to rush him to the hospital, and they diagnosed him with epilepsy. So the boy was concerned whether or not he was going to marry the girl. Now that the brother has epilepsy, is epilepsy hereditary? Yes or no? I don't know. And if he has it, could she have the gene? And could that go to my children? He didn't know what to do. He just didn't know. Maybe I should walk away. Maybe the fact that he had this seizure now was a sign from Hashem that I should walk away. So he went to his Rabbi, he went to Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein. Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein didn't know what to say there. It's very hard to advise a person, very hard to advise a person. You know, people come to me very often. This week I had a few people come to me with, they're thinking they're dating this girl, they're thinking of getting engaged, or they just got engaged, and they want to introduce her, and that's fine. I did a wedding this week even. Sometimes they'll ask me what I think. Very hard to tell them what I think, but sometimes I see warning signs. Sometimes I see a sign. You know, I had a person in my office this week with a girl that he wants to marry, and I asked the girl some questions, and the girl's answer was, I don't really care what you have to say. I have my own rabbi. So, the guy was shocked. He expected that she would respect his rabbi, and he came to me. And basically, she said to him and to me, but she said to him, you can go over to your rabbi, even if we get married. I have my own rabbi. I'm not going to your rabbi. Well, what do you think the chances of that wedding? What are the chances here that this is going to be successful? Okay, the fact that she didn't smile once in the whole hour she was there was a world's record. I've never had anybody in my office that didn't smile even once. I often crack jokes. I mean, he smiles every 5 minutes. I'm a funny guy. Didn't smile once. Come on. That tells you something. So Rabbi Zilberstein didn't know what to do, so he consulted, I guess, his brother-in-law, Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Very famous people, Gedolei Yisrael. And Reb Chaim Kanievsky, maybe or Reb Zilberstein himself remembered it. There was a fascinating story with the Chofetz Chaim. Listen to this story. The Chofetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, who wrote the Mishnah Berurah, and many others for him. When he was young, his father died. And his mother later remarried. So he had a stepfather. And the stepfather was very good to him. They were very poor, but the stepfather was good to him. This stepfather had a daughter from a previous marriage. So in the house, he had a stepfather and a stepsister. Not related to him, was his father's daughter from a different marriage. Anyway, when this girl turned 19, 20, 21, no one gave her a shidduch. No one dated her. And because they had no money. They were poor, as we say, church mice. They had no money. By the time she was 22, 23, and in Europe, if a girl was 22, 23, like she was... Whoa, she was old, she was way over the hill. The stepfather went to the Chofetz Chaim, who was 20, he was 3 years younger, and said to him, I want you to marry your stepsister. So that's an interesting question. There is in the Tzavos of Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, we talked about that in previous, a while ago, that he advises not to marry your stepsister. He advises no stepbrother, stepsister marriages. But from halacha, it's mutter.
Oh, yeah?
They're not related. They're not related. There's no blood relationship. That's not his real father, and therefore that's not his real sister. There's no blood connection.
Okay.
Not even cousins, they're nothing, there's no relation. So now the Chofetz Chaim, okay, and in Europe they did that, they made shidduchim, they said, boy, girl, you're getting married. They saw each other once or twice, and as long as nothing was outlandish, they got married. How is he going to tell his stepfather no, his stepsister no? So he agreed. The Chofetz Chaim agreed. What happened was that he comes back to yeshiva and he tells his teachers, his Rabbeim, his friends, I get a mazel tov, I'm engaged. Who are you engaged to? My stepsister. They said, what? She's 3 years older than you. In those days, and even today, how often do guys marry women who are 3 years older? Usually the women are 3 years younger, not 3 years older. Number one. Number two, they said to him, you're a genius. You can get any girl. You should marry a girl from a very rich family. And your father-in-law will support you so you can sit and learn Torah your whole life. We know that your father-in-law has no money. So you're going to be forced to work. And the Chofetz Chaim did. He had a store, He used to work in a store an hour every day. You're a prodigy. You're a genius child. You can't go through with this. This is nonsense. This is crazy. And he spoke to him and spoke to him and spoke to him that he finally realized he has to break it off. He can't marry this girl. And he gets it on a train, and he's going to travel back to his hometown, to Rodden, to tell his stepfather, and of course the girl, that I'm sorry, I can't marry you. It's not for me. It's just not for me. I can do better. I can do a lot better. On his way back, the train stops at different cities. In one of the cities it stopped, there was a young man who had an epileptic seizure. And he fell to the ground, and he was twitching and moving, and people couldn't look at it. It was so scary, and it was so embarrassing. And the Chofetz Chaim never saw this before. It was the first time he ever saw someone fall to the ground and no control over their body. And when they finally stabilized this person, I guess took him to the hospital, the Chofetz Chaim asked himself, why did I see this? I could have come 10 minutes earlier. This guy could have come 10 minutes later. Why did Hashem have this guy collapse right in front of me by my window on the train, that I should see this embarrassing situation? He says, it must be that Hashem is trying to tell me something. Don't embarrass a person. Because when you embarrass a person in life, your life is over. You lose control. Wow. And he got off the train, crossed the tracks, and took a train right back to the yeshiva, and he married this girl.
Did she go home?
Right? He married this
back
girl.
home.
He didn't go back home. He went back to the yeshiva, and he went through later with the marriage.
He wanted to go.
He wanted to go home to the
But
cancer.
He didn't say that. Yeah.
And he married her. And he had said, it's brought down, that the Chofetz Chaim said that he was only able to write the Mishnah Berurah because he had a wife like she. Because if he had married a rich girl, this rich girl would have had rich tastes and would have wanted certain things and go to shows and travel, and he would have been so distracted trying to help meet his wife's rich needs, he would never have been able to focus. But this girl had very simple needs. She was very happy with very little. And therefore, she took care of him and the family and allowed him to write the Mishnah Berurah. And he says that had he married anybody else, he would never have been able to have written the Mishnah Berurah. He only wrote the Mishnah Berurah because he married her.
They do nice women, right? They create nice women.
I would like to think so. The Chofetz Chaim's wife, right, this girl, guess where she's buried? I think she's buried here in New York.
Oh, yeah?
I know that in the Cypress Hill Cemetery, I think the Chofetz Chaim's wife and the Chofetz Chaim's son are buried here. I don't know how they got here
What
after
about
the
him?
war. He's buried in Rodden. And, when you go to his grave, it's a black stone that shows the
Italy?
hands of the
In
Kohen.
Italy? He lived there? In
He
Italy?
lived there. He lived there in Rodden, in Poland. And he's buried there. I have pictures of his grave. I was there. They put a beautiful black monument. There's almost nothing there, just a few graves. And they wrote all the books that he wrote on the monument. I should bring in some of these pictures.
The boy that you were talking about yesterday or last week, what you suggest? They said you saw the sign.
To this marriage,
Yeah.
he asked me what I thought, and I told him honestly. I said, my opinion, she's not for you.
Don't get married, yeah?
Don't get married.
He followed, I mean, he listened.
Did he hear me? He heard me. Is he going to follow me? Time will tell.
Oh,
One of my friends.
no.
Time will tell. Because I don't want that he should get married to her, and 6 months later, he's going to be a client of mine and not for a mortgage. I'm not looking for business. I'm busy enough. I'm not looking for business. Some people look for business. I don't look for business. For mortgage business, I would like to look for. That I could always use. But then on this, I don't look for this business. It says as follows. Very interesting. In the Yalkut Shimoni, it brings this down. Kappa porsa lo oni. It says, she puts out her hand to the spindle in the Eshes Chayil. So it brings down the Yalkut Shimoni that it's a reference to Yael, Eshes Chevra Akeni. Now, who is this Yael? In the book of Shoftim, Yael was a woman who, when Sisera was fighting against the Jews, and he was losing, he ran into her tent to hide. And she gave him milk to drink, and he was exhausted, he went to sleep, and she killed him. And then she told the Israeli generals, your enemy is right here, and with him dead, they won the war. How did she kill him? That's what the Yalkut Shimoni asks. How did she kill him? The Novi says how she killed him. Tell me how she killed him.
She took a hammer and a nail and
She took a hammer, true, and she took a tent peg. Now what's a tent peg? It's a piece of wood that's not very sharp on the bottom, that you stick into the ground and you tie the tent around it. Right? And you put 4 pegs and you tie the tent. So the Yalkut Shimoni says, why didn't she just take the guy's sword? Mm-hmm. He was sleeping. He was a general. He was a soldier. He had a sharp sword. Take the sword and chop, chop.
Chop, chop.
Why take a peg that's not very sharp,
Yeah.
and then you're going to hold it over his head, then you're going to take this big hammer. By the time you do all that, he could wake up. And then he'll take his sword and chop, chop you. Make sushi out of you. So the question is, why didn't she do that? Why didn't she do that? So Rabbi Ruderman talked about this once. The Yalkut Shimoni says, and Rabbi Ruderman said something on this. The Yalkut Shimoni says, because according to the times, a sword was a man's weapon, and like a man's dress, a man's suit. And women didn't dress like men, and men didn't dress like women. It's not like today. It's not like today. It's not like in Williamsburg that we have. You come here, you hear all the horrible stories. It's not like today. In those days, women dressed like women and men dressed like men. So she didn't take the sword because it was a man's weapon. Of course, Rav Ruderman says, had she asked the Shaila, had she gone to her local Orthodox rabbi and said, what should I do over here? What would he have said to her? Take the sword. Your life is in danger.
Or knife.
Right? Take a knife, a sword, take anything. Don't take a tent peg. Hashem created a miracle. She couldn't have done that on her own. It was a miraculous thing. So Rav Ruderman said, you know what you see from this story? You see from this story how to judge a person. A person is judged when they're in a situation of pressure, a situation of stress, and how they conduct themselves. A person who, when they're stressful, can still think straight and follow the Torah and remain calm, that's a good person. Because they're able to do that when they're stressed. So when they're not stressed, for sure they'll do it. Most people fall apart when they're stressed. And Rav Ruderman says they're teaching you the importance of how to go through life without being stressed, without giving in to the stress. The next story is just an unusual story. And I try to introduce you to many names, because I don't know how much exposure you've had to some of these people, and you probably forget these names, but I like to share them with you anyway. This is from a publication called the Torah Tavlin. It's published in Muncie. He brings on a story with the Avnei Nezer. The Avnei Nezer is the name of a book, a halachic book, a book on Gemara, written by Rav Avrom Bornstein, who lived in the Polish city of Sachakov. He was the Sachakova Rebbe. He was a Hasidic rabbi, but a brilliant person, a brilliant Talmud Chacham.
Still there?
No, Sachakov might still be there. He lived easily 100 years ago, maybe more. And maybe 100 years ago. And he wrote a sefer called the Avnei Nezer. Now, people came from all over to the Hasidic rabbis for a bracha. For whatever their problem was, they came for a bracha. One person who was married for many, many years and had no children came to the Sachakova Rebbe and he says, Rebbe, give me a bracha that I should have a child. And he never gave him a bracha. Why? Each time he came, he hemmed and hawed. He said, I'm busy, I can't see you now. Finally, this man cornered the rabbi and said to him, I've asked you year after year for a bracha to have children. You have never once given me that bracha. I want to know why. Why didn't you give me a bracha? So the Rebbe held his hand and he said to him, do you want me to bless you with a son who one day will become a priest? The Chassid's face fell and became gray ashen. From that moment on, he said to his wife, we're not going to have children, and he never asked to have a child. When he passed away, his son took over. He passed away in 1910. His son took over, Reb Shmuel Bornstein, who wrote a sefer called the Shem Mishmuel. The Shem Mishmuel is a very difficult book. It's a Kabbalistic book. It's on the Chumash, probably 8 volumes, 9 volumes, brilliant, deep. The Sachakova Rebbes were so brilliant, like the Gera Rebbes were brilliant. They were geniuses. He was a child prodigy. He was a genius. And the Chassid would go to the Shem Mishmuel, Reb Shmuel Bornstein, every time he had a tish and every chagim and everything else. One time, the Shem Mishmuel called the Chassid over and said to him, you always come to me and you ask me for a bracha, for parnasa, and for health, but I hear you have no children. How come you don't ask me to give you a bracha that you should have children? So he said, he first didn't know what to answer. He said to him, I spoke to your father about this. And your father told me, what do you want? I should give you a bracha, you should have a child who's going to be a priest? So I don't want any children, he said. So the Shem Mishmuel said to him, my father was a great man with great vision, but I give you a bracha that you should have children. And the story goes that he had 5 children. 5 children. And then the war broke out, World War II. And the Nazis were coming into the ghettos, and they were evacuating people from the cities. They were going from town to town, looking for Jews, sending all the Jews to the concentration camps. One of the children that he had was very light-skinned, not dark-skinned, very light-skinned. And when the Nazis burst into the house and says, are there any Jews here? This child dressed up like a priest. And he says, there's no Jews here. We're all Catholics. I'm a priest, and these are my brothers and sisters. And I'm a priest. And the Nazis grilled him and tested him, and he knew everything about the New Testament and everything else. And as a consequence, he disguised himself as a Catholic priest, Using his disguise, he was able to elude detection, survived the Holocaust, and then he moved with the family to Eretz Yisrael and started up the whole family. So he brings down the story and he says, the Avnei Nezer saw the priest,
It sounds so.
but the son saw who the priest really was. It was a disguise. It was just fake. And he gave him a bracha. We hear these stories. You know, I know that sometimes people say to me, you know, are these stories really true? And the answer is, they don't say these stories about me. They say these, you know. So the fact that they say such stories about these people tell you that these people were way beyond, what happens, to everybody else. You know, these stories are unbelievable. You know, they're wild stories. You know, so but the Avnei Nezer, he was great, but the Shem Shmuel was brilliant. And that's how they bring out the story. It says, the Netziv brings down, interesting story, the Netziv brings down that when you see a bird, a mother bird sitting on the chickens, on the eggs, it's not a chicken, it has to be a wild bird, and the eggs are kosher, and you want the eggs because you want to have breakfast, so you have to send away the mother bird, okay? Now, I told you before, the chances of you being able to use those eggs are zero almost. Because if the mother's sitting on the eggs must be fertilized. If they're fertilized, when you crack it open, there's going to be blood spots. You're not going to use those eggs anyway. But it's a mitzvah in the Torah, and not every mitzvah we understand, and there's different reasons why this mitzvah exists. So the Netziv says something very fascinating, and he quotes the Avnei Nezer. He says, tell me something. When was the last time you were able to walk over to a bird, pick it up, and cast it away and send it flying? What was that? Were you able to ever do that? You did it? You walked over to a bird on the street and were able to throw it away?
I did it on my porch.
No, you did what? Shluch HaKan, you mean? No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a regular bird on the street, a pigeon. You see a pigeon outside. What happens when you walk close to the pigeon? Flies away. Right? Every bird flies away. Why is this bird not flying away?
It's protecting its eggs.
It's protecting its children. It's protecting its young. So the Torah is telling you a very interesting thing. When a mother bird is compromised, because on one hand, it wants to fly away to preserve its life. On the other hand, it's willing to give up its life to protect its children. Don't take advantage of someone who's compromised. That means the mother bird is vulnerable because she's willing to stay behind to protect her children. So the Torah says, in that case, you can't take the bird. That means if you're thinking that the eggs are no good anyway, so let me just take the mother bird. It's easy to catch her. I'll catch her, right? And this way it's a pigeon, it's a kosher bird, let's say, and I'll slaughter the bird, I'll have chicken tonight, the halacha is no, you cannot take the mother.
Why?
Because she's compromised. She didn't fly away. She didn't fly away because she stayed for the children. So when the mother is compromised, you can't take the eggs.
Yeah, really?
And you can't take the mother.
But to pick up eggs, and it's a different thing, right?
Right.
Different
The
reason.
different thing is to pick up the egg and just put the nest back down. That's a different thing. But you can't take the mother because she's compromised. She is worried about her children, so she didn't fly away. You can't take advantage. At the end of the Parasha, it says that Amalek came and attacked. Right? So the famous Rashi, what did Amalek do that was so bad? So the Rashi says like it's a pot that's cooking, bubbling, and it cooled the pot. So the ask over here, the Meforshim is why he brings down. He says, I don't get it. Amalek attacked, Yeshua led the war against Amalek, and what happened to Amalek? They got defeated, right? They got lost. So you would think that when the word got out that Amalek, which is such a strong nation, with such a strong army, got defeated by a bunch of farmers, you would think it didn't cool anything down. It heated the pot twice as hot. That means, would you attack knowing that the strongest army in the world just attacked and a bunch of farmers drove them away? Would you say, they're weaker now? They're not weaker now. They're 10 times stronger now. The reputation is stronger. You don't fight someone who's undefeated. You fight a fighter who's lost a few, right? If you fight a fighter who's never lost, that's not a fight you're looking for. So he says something different. He says you're forgetting the purpose of Am Yisrael. The purpose of Am Yisrael is to spread Hashem's name. I mentioned to you this last time. If in Shmona Esrei and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, you forget to say Zochreinu L'chaim Melech Chofetz B'chaim, you repeat the Shmona Esrei? No. But if you forget to say HaMelech HaKadosh, you've got to repeat the Shemona Esrei. He says our job is to make Hashem known in the world. You know what Amalek did by attacking? Amalek said one thing: we don't care about God. That means we don't care about the Jews. And maybe they're stronger than us, but we don't care about God. Their attack was an attack against Hashem. That's what Hashem says. I'm not secure in this world. If Amalek can reject Hashem, you know what all the other nations of the world did? They rejected Hashem also. That's what he cooled them off. He cooled them off by causing the world to reject Hashem's name. It's interesting that it says the reward for sending away the mother bird is long life. But the Rambam says, where's the long life? Not in this world. It's in the next world. V'harachta yamim ba'olam shekulo orach. But the Gemara says that's not exactly true. Rabbeinu B'chai brings down midrashim that when a person does these mitzvahs, that the reward is long life. You know what long life means? That you will have children who, after you're gone, will keep Torah and mitzvahs, and therefore you live long through them. It means you continue the chain, the Mesorah. So he says, long life is by doing these type of mitzvahs that will be sanctify Hashem's name. You will live longer, of course, but your children will live long also, and therefore you will live longer through your children. I'm just trying to see if I have anything else. I'm speaking in a few places tomorrow. I just want to see if I have anything else. What?
He had the kid was trying to send away the mother bird.
Right.
And he died.
That's right. And because his father told him to do it. Right? So that's what made Acher into Acher. You know, I don't know if I told you this last week. Then I want to tell you a story. Maybe we'll end early. There was Rabbi Yitzchak from Berditchev. Was something very interesting. One year, he always used to find schools. And one year he got up. I don't know if I told you. He got up and he said to Hashem, he says, year after year, we blow 100 times the shofar. 2 days Rosh Hashanah, 200 times. We blow the shofar 100 times each day. And we've done this for years and years, for hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years already, more than 1,000 years. And we ask you for things. He says, this year I'm going to ask you for one thing. I want you to do what we do. We blow the shofar. I want you also to blow the shofar. What shofar? The shofar from Yemos HaMashiach, right? The famous pasuk that says that at the end it says that Tekah b'shofar godol l'cheiruseinu. Blow the shofar to make us free. That means, Hashem, I'm not asking for anything else. Just do what we're doing. We're blowing the shofar. We'll blow it 100 times. All I want from you is to blow the shofar once. Fair? We blow 100 times, you blow it one time. Deal? That's what Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev says. That he wanted just that this year should be the year to Ka b'shofar godol l'cheiruseinu. Okay. Story time.